So guys, it's 2 minutes past 4, and I'm a big believer in beginning things on time. So I appreciate your patience as we've waited a couple of moments for some additional parents to come on. We have 14 parents that have asked to be part of the focus group this evening. And I've known full well that some wouldn't be with us, and we're likely to have a few others join. But what I wanted to do was briefly introduce myself. I don't know most of you. And then talk a little bit about what the Money 101 camp is intended to be. And then I've got 5 questions I'd like to ask you. And they're open-ended questions, and I'm just very interested in hearing your candid responses. So by way of introduction, my name is Rick Haskell. Some of you know me because I sent out the invitation on this to a list of people, some of whom knew me, but some of you are from the Westminster College community that I may simply not know well, such as Erica, and others are perhaps parents or family members of youth that have participated in this camp in prior summers. So I want you to know that first, I appreciate your willingness to do this. This is not a responsibility I've had for a long period of time. I just picked this up recently, and we decided to go ahead and morph the curriculum from the camp, or from what's been distributed in prior years, not only to a virtual format, which we've been effectively forced into doing because of the COVID-19 virus, of course, but also try to make the most of it. And from my perspective, that means deliver to the students what their parents think they need, and do it in a way that is going to engage them and give them tools that go beyond just their parents' expectations, but that they can apply for their own benefit, well beyond their teenage, middle high school and high school years. So just know that that's what we're looking to accomplish here. Some of you are parents of youth that may well be in the camp. Others of you are perhaps are parents of youth that are a little bit older than that, or maybe a little bit younger, or possibly parents of youth that are in the right age group for the camp, but that may not be in the camp. I've purposely constructed a cross-section here, not just of parents of youth that I think will be in the camp itself. So know that having you in the focus group isn't a firm commitment on your part to have your youth be part of this camp, although if they're age appropriate, I'd certainly love them to be. But we're trying to make sure that we get a good cross-section of what parents are looking for, of a variety of age range of children and a variety of situations as well. Now you'll notice that there are several names that you just see in some of the otherwise blank images on the screen. Those would be some faculty and the dean from the Gore School of Business who are simply observers this evening. We're taking this camp very seriously and doing what we can to make the absolute most of it. So with that, I want to go ahead and introduce a couple of little things on the group, and I'm going to share my screen as I do that, and I'm hoping that this works as I've intended. Are you now able to see a screen that starts Money 101? Nod your head if you are. Very good, thank you. I have a multiple monitor structure in my office at home, and I never am quite sure which screen comes up first, so I apologize. So I know some of you probably have some questions about the camp, and I want to take care of those quickly, but then I'll also give a little bit of time at the very end when I'm finished answering questions or asking questions and listening to your answers. I just want to give you a little bit of information first. So there will be 4 camp sessions from which students will be able to choose. The middle school sessions will be the week of July 27th to the 31st, and they will have a choice of either a morning session from 8:30 a.m. to noon or an afternoon session from 1 to 4:30. And a youth that signs into the morning session will be expected to stay in the morning session for all 5 days of the week. Similarly, the high school age youth will be the next week. So August 3rd through the 7th, and they've got the same kind of date structure here. We've decided that the cost of the camp will be less than it's been in prior years, and this will be a $160 cost. For those of you that are focus group participants, or for those youth that come from households of focus group participants, or households of Westminster College alumni, faculty, and staff, there's a $50 discount off of that $160, so it becomes a $110 cost. If you decide that you do want to have a youth from your household be part of the camp, reach out to me for the discount code on that. The camp cost will include a financial calculator. In fact, it's the same financial calculator we use in the Bill and Vieve Gore School of Business for all of our students. A Money 101 t-shirt, a Westminster College Money 101 book bag, and some other camp materials. We'll be holding a focus group for the youth this coming Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and any parents of youth are certainly welcome to observe on that, preferably not in a different screen, preferably with the youth, so we don't have many different screens show up on cameras and such. But you're certainly welcome to listen in on that, but if you choose to, I'll ask that you simply be the fly on the wall. I will be leading the camp sessions myself. I'm a finance professor in the Bill and Vieve Gore School of Business. I've raised 4 now recovering teenagers that well into adulthood. I have some grandchildren, one of whom I believe will actually be a participant in the camp with us. But I'm very interested in seeing to it that this is a strong experiential opportunity for the youth that are going to participate. We're going to try to keep this as applied a camp as possible. This session tonight is being recorded, and I will send out a link on the recording to each one of you to view if you'd like. And then portions of the recording will be used to develop some of the materials in support of our summer camp. So that's more than a little bit of a disclaimer and some just basic information. Any questions quickly before we begin with the 5 questions that I might like to ask? Well, very good. Diana, thank you for joining us. So I'll go ahead then and just put up the first question. And what I plan to do, just so you'll know, is I'll put up a question and give you a moment to read it, and then I will stop sharing the screen so that we can all see each other better. And so the first question has to do with what's happened to us recently. So virtual classrooms have quickly become a part of our lives starting mid-March of this year, whether you're a student, a faculty member, or you have a student in your household. So here's what I'd like to know. What worked well about that for the youth in your household? What worked well about your child's virtual experience, and why did it work well? And I'll let you kind of chime in here, and if no one
sure. I'll chime in. Thanks. Good question. And I think most importantly, they're actually getting sleep. I think our school system wakes the kids up way too early, so they're sleeping until 10, and their cognitive functions are probably optimized by that point as growing teenagers. And they're working on their own schedule, so they're getting autonomy that they're going to be required to develop somewhere, between now and getting a career going, and taking accountability and responsibility for their own agenda and schedule. As Clayton Christensen said, online learning is going to be a huge disruption. That was 20 years ago. I think we're now seeing that come into fruition. I think Westminster and other universities are taking note. Your dean's probably taking note that this is a huge disruptor. And I've heard of a Dartmouth student, it's my daughter's friend, who's not going to take online this fall. He's a pre-med, and he said it's not worth paying $70,000 a year for him to go to Dartmouth and go online. So, I think there's 2 sides of that. One is it's a fantastic disruptor where kids are going to learn online better, and then some kids still want the hands-on approach and the lab work that's required in person. So depends on who you are, but there will be a divide, is my belief. And I think my kids are excelling because they adopt and adapt to technology quite well.
Very good. Thank you, Tristan. What else, guys?
I'll join in. I totally agree with the sleep comment. I also feel like a lot of the classes my kids were expected to do were just assignments, and they did not like that. They liked it when a teacher would at least record some sort of classroom discussion and then add the work on top of that.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I can jump in. Sorry, somebody else.
Please, go ahead.
I just think that I didn't see a ton of online courses, like for my son, he's in middle school. And a lot of it was just online, had to go and download assignments. It was tons and tons of busy work. So kind of agreeing with the last comment a little bit. There were a few Zoom calls that he joined, and I think he enjoyed the social aspect of that, but they didn't seem to be extreme. It was more checking in and seeing how things were going. I don't think there was a ton of actual lectures or, teaching going on, at least with his school, as much as I maybe would have liked to see. I think there was a lot of busy work and a lot of stuff, which he got really exhausted and was begging to go back to school. Really, it was really hard for him. So.
Got it. Quincy, any comments?
Sure. Yeah, our teenager, I think similar sentiment, was wanting that social aspect. Pretty much all that she did was a lot of busy work. She was only spending maybe 30 minutes doing her homework a day, and that was just completing those assignments, getting them turned in, and that was it. There wasn't really any face-to-face interaction. So in terms of what work she liked being done quickly, but then it left for a want and desire for a little bit more active engagement.
Very good. Now I'll ask for at least one other.
I'll echo the comment about active engagement. My daughter had a few instances in classes where they would set up almost like pop quiz. I think that it's not Quizlet. I think the platform is Kahoot or something along those lines, where it actually allowed them during a Zoom class session to actually engage as opposed to just staring at the screen. I apologize, I have some background noise at my house. The problem I saw, even with online class or just Zoom calls where they were having classes, was even though the kids would be on camera and maybe sometimes not on camera, to still be chatting with each other on the side or on their phones or doing other stuff online as opposed to just watching the content. So anything that would engage her attention so that she wasn't looking for those other sources of, I guess, entertainment were really helpful.
Very good. Diana, I see that you're off of mute. Do you have something to add?
No, I just kind of agree with the social aspect comment. She's been ready to go back to school. She's headed into 9th grade, and she's just looking for more of the social aspect. The online classes have been fine.
Well, very good. So now I'll turn the tide on this. What did you see take place in those online or virtual classes that didn't work well, and why do you think it worked poorly? Brett and Jody, do you have any comment to add into that?
Yeah, I was going to say what worked well was just that they could do things on their own pace. That worked well for my kids. What didn't work well was having it be optional. So my son's Spanish class was optional for him to log in. I couldn't get him to log in. So it would have been better had it been a mandatory login, but none of the teachers had mandatory logins. Most of them had office hour type Zoom calls that the kids could log in if they had a specific question. And that just didn't work for my kids. They didn't want to log in as an option. Had they been told they had to, they would have logged in and participated.
Okay. What else didn't go well, and why didn't it? Erica, anything?
Yeah, I don't think it worked as well when there wasn't an opportunity to engage and participate. So the recorded lectures didn't work well. The lack of opportunity to have conversation or to hear from peers or to participate in some way just didn't go well. And so the more interactive, then the more interested and I think more engaged they were.
Very good. What about you, Emily?
I have one son who really excelled in the online environment, and then one who has ADHD and really struggled with the lack of structure and interaction and sociability. So he tried every which way to get out of doing assignments and just submitted blank pages and fell back asleep, unless we're watching him. So I think there was a lot that was lacking for students like him that require a bit more just that structure and more more attention from the classroom environment, whether that be from a teacher or an aide. So that was difficult for him.
Very good. And I'm not going to pronounce your name correctly. I believe that you must be related to Quincy. Is it Kapuli?
It's Kepwali.
Okay, well, that's close. I tried Kapwali, so thank you.
You can call me Kip, and I'm Quincy's husband.
And anything you'd like to add either to what tended to work well or poorly?
I think just keeping in mind that in order for online classes to work, we assume that everyone has access to a computer and access to Wi-Fi and access to a safe space where they can sit and focus on their homework. And I don't think that's available to everyone. I know that in my household, we broke one of our laptops and we were, trying to look for a replacement real quick so that not only I could do my online classes, but my sister also.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. It reminds me to tell you that I will be sending out to you a relatively short, by that I mean 5 or 8 question follow-up survey sometime within the next day. I'll send it out at the same time that I send the link to this recording. That survey will be asking questions that are easily quantifiable and not open-ended, such as, do you have access to reliable internet? Do you have access to a computer with sufficient speed or memory and such to process things? Have you done online work before? So it'll be easily quantified questions rather than these open-ended. We're making an assumption that any household that enrolls their student in a virtual summer camp likely has access to good quality internet. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't make that enrollment. But that's an assumption, and we're trying to validate it through surveys and such. Well, let's move on to the next question then. And I've got that up on my other screen, so let's see if I can bring that up for us. And that is, what are the top 3 personal finance topics you would like your child to get out of this camp? Now, again, this would be making the assumption that your child is going to participate. So whether that's true or not, hypothetically, what are the top 3 personal finance topics you would like your child to get out of this camp? Any comments? Emily?
Creating a savings account, and also creating a budget.
So, Emily, when you say creating, are you talking about the how-to or the benefit of?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Okay.
And the same with the budget as well.
Yes.
I'll piggyback on Emily. I think just that driving that message home that it's something for their future, that I think right now my kids feel like I'm taking their money. They don't get the concept of compounding interest and giving it back to them in some form or manner.
Okay.
One thing I would add to that, because I agree with all of that so far, but just understanding credit and how, interest and how it works when you're borrowing credit cards, and, interest can either work for you or against you, depending on, if you're borrowing it or saving, that sort of thing. So just understanding interest and borrowing, that sort of thing.
All right. What else?
Yeah, I would agree with signing up, understanding the benefit of saving, whether it's a savings account or investments, and compound interest, and examples of, if you were able to even put $100 away starting whatever age you are, that they are, and taking it out when you're 65, how much, and every year putting in that same amount, how much you would get, is so important for them to understand that concept. The thing that my kids don't really get is that they have to save for their retirement. They just want to spend everything they have now. So it's so hard for me to just consistently ask them to save a percentage of whatever money they are making. So.
Okay. Anyone else?
Rick, I'm wondering, I'm just kind of thinking of myself when I was that age, and I'm thinking that retirement is such a distant endpoint for somebody who's in middle school that to think about saving for retirement, I probably couldn't even conceive of what that means, and certainly wouldn't value it because I'd rather buy my Nintendo that I want now as opposed to something that's going to happen 50, 60 years from now. And so I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a topic, but maybe as a strategy, helping to frame saving in terms that a young person can understand, using endpoints and values and preferences that kids at that age could really appreciate and value, to drive home the importance of saving, with kind of thinking the long term of retirement, but also in the short term, what does savings do for them on a more immediate basis?
Okay. What other items would you like to see here?
Can I quickly piggyback off
Oh,
of
please.
what saying? I think that it's been fascinating to talk with my boys about their goals around cars and houses and what jobs and how there's such a disconnect. So, just even having them think through what working at Target and that, just that income and what then that equates to, and their dream car and what the payment would look like, that kind of thing. I think is they're hungry for that kind of information, and they seem to be, it's all new.
Very good.
And also, if I can just, for me, my sister is going to be the one that will be taking this, and my hope is that after taking this class, she can realize that money is a tool that she can use. I know that as children of immigrants, we're conditioned to think that money is life or death. And I think growing up in that mindset can be detrimental. So I want her to realize money, finances, and knowing how to handle these things are tools to help her in her life, and it's not the end goal of everything.
Very good, Kip. Thank you. Jessica?
My mind keeps going to, because I agree with everything that's been brought up. I was thinking about things in a little bit of a broader context, and maybe just a very, very brief introduction to to business in general, and how companies generate and maintain money. I mean, I appreciate that's kind of a step past what some of the topics we're talking about, but I think it would be beneficial for the kids to have maybe a broader understanding of the finance system in our country, especially when it's so topical with current events these days, or say, maybe not as much as it was a few weeks ago, but I think maybe something very introductory could be beneficial.
Interesting. So I'm going to ask a question that I don't actually have on my prepared list, because you're giving me some responses that are different than the ones that I had thought I might get. I've operated to this point based on the presumption that basic financial literacy, basic personal finance, is so readily available to any of us, including our youth online, that some of the more remedial concepts may not be that necessary to spend much time on, and some higher order concepts like, fine, you're almost 16 years old, you want to buy a brand new Mustang. Well, here's what it's going to cost you to buy it, to finance it, to avoid some of the pitfalls that finance manager at the dealership is going to try to get you into with the extended warranty programs, to insure it and to maintain it. So things stepping into those kinds of realms. Am I overreaching in my thoughts here, or are these in line with what you'd like to see addressed? I can think about the same kind of thing with a house, with education, with travel. We can apply this same element to many, many different things. Am I overreaching?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think those real world examples are really how you get the concepts into everybody's brains. Yeah, you know, like gaining credit. How do you gain credit when you're 16? You know, maybe you don't, but how can you buy a house? Because you can't buy a house without credit. So.
Right, very good. Any final comment on this question before I move to another? Okay, so we'll do that. So what are some of the personal finance, oh, let me bring this up, I apologize. What are some of the personal finance topics you believe are too complex for your child to understand? So there are many concepts, financial concepts that you deal with in adulting that you might think are too complex for your child to understand or to be taught. I don't mean inappropriate, of course, because there certainly will be nothing inappropriate or unsafe. But what might be too complex, do you think? What are some issues? I want to know the things to stay away from. Erica, any comment with respect to this?
Yeah, I'd actually take a different approach. I don't know that there are topics as it relates to personal finance or, you know, the things that we've been talking about so far that would be inappropriate. I think it's more about how the information is presented. Mm-hmm. So is it interactive? Is it, you know, aged to them appropriately? I mean, how my sort of rising ninth grader learns would be very different than how my rising seventh grader or sixth grader learns. But they both could handle some element of just about any topic if it's presented in a way that's engaging and interactive.
Okay. What else? Cassidy, anything come to your mind with your son?
I really appreciate that last comment. I think she said it really well. I kind of feel the same way. My son, I can't think of much that he wouldn't be able to understand as long as it's like presented age appropriately. He's, you know, 12. So obviously there are things that would be beyond his understanding, but ultimately I think that there's nothing to, I think at some point I want him to learn everything. I want him to understand everything there is about finance, and I want him to get out into the real world. And, you know, there's things that I didn't know when I went out into the real world that I wish I had known and wish I had been taught better. And I definitely don't think it's being taught in the schools. So we're trying as parents to do our best to teach, but I think learning from somebody else is always very beneficial because they don't always listen to parents as much as, you know, other sources as well, or just that added source too. So I think anything would be great. And yeah.
Very good. Brett and Jody, anything that you think you'd rather not have your children exposed to in terms of financial topics at this particular point?
No, I think I agree with what's been said. I just as long as it's presented in a age-appropriate way, I think any topic seems like it'd be fair game.
Okay. Well, very good. Thank you. And just for what it's worth, I tend to agree with you. In fact, some of you know that I am not a lifetime academic. I came to academia after having had a relatively successful and satisfying career in finance and investments and private equity. I have the
Rick, is that code word for making tens of millions?
Would that it were, Tristan. One of you on this Zoom today is one of my adult children, and were she to bring herself to the service here, would tell you that, oh no, that's not the case. But I believe that our youth are infinitely more capable than sometimes we treat them as being, especially when we're in groups of them. And so I appreciate hearing some of your input. Let me go ahead and move then to our next question and share that with you. So Money 101, obviously it's a virtual summer camp. It's going to last 3.5 hours a day for 5 consecutive days. This will be summertime. What are some of the ways in which you think we could most productively engage your child in a virtual setting? Now, you've already given me a couple of things like engagement, practical application, and such. I'm looking here for something that may be yet more focused than that. or with some additional detailing if you might have some. So what are some of the ways in which you think that you'd like to see your child engaged, or that you think would be most productive to engage them in this virtual setting and structure?
I'll jump in. I think something, perhaps a project they work on that allows them to collaborate maybe in smaller groups, maybe utilizing the breakout function of Zoom and allowing them to have small groups that then come together and are pieced together to create something bigger. I'm thinking about maybe some scenarios where maybe you're running a business and each group has their different aspects they're contributing to the business. Maybe it's piecing together something that's more applicable to buying a car or buying a house, but something that is relatable but allows them to work together in smaller groups so they don't maybe have some of the fear or anxiety of speaking up in a larger setting. Might be helpful.
Okay, let me ask a follow-up question to that, because I think you're right. Given the age group that we're dealing with, how successful would those breakouts, 3 to 5 person breakouts perhaps, maybe even 7 or 8, be if there was not a coach or a counselor in the breakout session? Would it evolve to just social chit chat?
I think that's a very fair point. And I think if, in my mind, having breakout sessions that are shorter, that maybe you lessen the risk of it turning into just chaos and free for all. But I mean, if you're allowing them to break out for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then the expectation is that they will be back, I think that, and they have a very clear assignment, I think that may be something that would be, that may be something successful. And the shorter time frame, maybe avoiding some of those distractions or other things that, just kind of general teenage silliness that pops up quite a bit.
I can't imagine what you mean by general teenage silliness. Would never have thought of such a thing.
Yes, I know you haven't.
Emily, any comments?
Yeah, so I am just trying to imagine my high school age son versus my junior high age son. And I'm imagining with some ground rules that my high school age son would do just fine without a coach or somebody facilitating the discussion. I'm not, and it's likely because of the maturity level of my middle age or my middle school age son and his ADHD, but he would probably struggle without an authority figure in the small group.
Thank you. What else?
I think I have 2 comments. The first one is that I think if students are opting into this, I think there's an assumption that they are likely to be actively engaged in this without that mediation or coach in the room. At least that would be my assumption for our teenager. I have no doubt that she would be fine in a situation that is not, there's no coach available. Even for longer periods of time, I would say even up to 30 minutes or so. Actually, you could probably pop in every now and then and she would be fine for the full 3 hours if she was given proper instruction. But I know that may not be the case for everyone, but I would assume that you could probably go on at least 30 minutes or so with this group of students that essentially is opting in. And then the second idea directed specifically to the question that you had asked was engaging them in like social media polls, like asking them, ask your friends, like, what do you like? And I know that works well when we work with her and if she has questions about something and we're like, well, I don't know. What do you think? Have you researched it? Have you asked or why are you, sometimes she makes assumptions. I'm like, why are you making this assumption? She's like, well, I saw it on social media. And I was like, okay, well, like, have you done any further research? Have you asked your friends? Like, or if it's about opinions, especially, like, has anyone heard or does anyone know what this is? Yes or no? And it's a good way to engage students, especially at the high school level, who are more actively on social media. But I know that might pose a barrier for folks whose children aren't on social media, but in our house, I mean, all the teenagers we know are on social media.
Yeah, my sense is the teenagers that we think are not on social media are on social media. What other comments with respect to this part? What other ideas for engagement? Jody?
Oh, I was just going to say with the small group, and it's my kids' personalities. My daughter she's 15, she had a class where they had to break into small groups for English, and she said her group sat in silence for the entire 5 minutes. No one wanted to speak, and the teacher came in at one point and tried to, come on, what are your ideas? And then left. I mean, it didn't work for her group, and she actually knew the kids. I think in a situation where she had just met kids online, I don't think she would participate. So that's my idea on small groups. And someone else mentioned the quiz thing. I can't remember what it is, but that's a really fun interactive thing for the kids. They score points and they can see how they do in comparison to everyone else that's taking the same quiz. It starts with a C or K. I'll have to ask my son what it is, but that would be my idea for a way to engage them.
Well, there are numerous quiz functions available within some of these platforms. Zoom has one, and by the way, I think you may already realize this, but the current expectation is that we will use either Microsoft Teams or Zoom as the platform for this. Both of them have a quiz function inside, and both of them have a polling function inside that we can utilize, and they have breakout room functions inside them as well. So we'll be able to use all of these to the extent that we might like to. So let me follow up on something that, Jody, I think that you might have referenced, and at least I attached to what you were saying. One of the things that we've considered is possibly having a point system where throughout the week, these enrollees, the campers, if you will, can accumulate points that on the last day, they can then redeem their points for something. Now, these are not going to be able to be terribly expensive items. I think you probably realize that. But they may be items that the youth would appreciate, and we can help them keep track of, or they can be keeping track of the points that they're accumulating. Is that a valuable exercise, or is it not all that meaningful to the youth the age that we're talking about?
It's absolutely valuable for my kids. My son would not engage without something like that. That would be really helpful for him. He's 13.
Okay. Tristan, what about your child? We may not have Tristan anymore. I apologize. Emily?
Yeah, I think that incentive programs have worked for both boys in our house for various reasons. So I think that would be a great idea.
So Tristan, I was asking, and maybe you're able to respond to this, would that kind of incentive structure be meaningful to youth in your household?
Absolutely. I think that's the only structure that's been working for us.
Cassidy?
Yeah, Weston would definitely, it would incentivize him. I think he would participate either way. That's kind of how he is. If he had a clear goal on what needed to be done, I think he would do either way, but he would definitely be incentivized by that.
Okay. Erica or Arden, any other thoughts on this?
I think the incentives are certainly helpful for some kids. A lot of times my kids don't do that stuff at school because they think the end result is stupid. You know, like they have this thing at their school where they can earn these, they call them, you know, the school mascot and then dollars or something, and then they can buy like a Tootsie Pop or something. And so my kid's like, I don't want a Tootsie Pop.
Yeah.
But I think it's really great for some kids. But my kids are motivated enough that they don't necessarily need an incentive if they're interested in the topic.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. So thank you. Those are the questions that I had that I wanted to pose of you. Now I'd like to take a few moments and see if there are questions you'd like to pose of me with respect to what our plans are, how any of the operational element of this, any of the other concepts. Anything that you might like to ask?
I have a question. What kind of feedback have you had in years past? I've never done this. My son's never done this. And so I'm just curious from the kids' perspective, Have they had, is it a positive, they've enjoyed it, they feel like they get a lot out of it? Just kind of curious what you've experienced in the past from that standpoint.
Good question, Cassidy. I think a couple of you have children that have been through this camp, a live version of it in the summer before. If we do, if you have any comments you'd like to give in response to Cassidy, I'd appreciate them. I have not had a child in it. My children are older. Arden?
Yeah, my child took it 2 years ago, and so he would have been 12. I thought it was really great when it was on campus because that was his first experience being on a college campus, which was really neat for him. And at Westminster, they have that room where they have all the screens and they did the investing. And that was his favorite part was, he got to pick stocks and everybody competed against each other. And then at the end of the week, they saw who, had the highest gains, and he really enjoyed that. So.
Good to know. Good to know. Obviously, we won't be able to use the CFA, and that's the Center for Financial Analysis. That's the room that Arden is referring to, which looks like a trading floor of a small brokerage firm. We won't be able to actually use that to bring the students together. We might actually generate some of our sessions from there so that so they can see the CFA. They won't be on those computer terminals, but they'll have access perhaps to other digital information right in front of them. So a good substitute. We similarly think that the college is a beautiful environment, especially in the summer months, and are thinking of ways that we can actually spend time in that beautiful campus in smaller groups, but also productively, not just taking people on a let's go hold hands through campus tour. So we're looking at it. If you've got any ideas along those lines, I would love to have them. For me, one of the values of a Westminster College associated activity happens to be the beauty of our campus and the attractivity it is.
Yeah, and just one more thing is I am a little hesitant with it being like if it's all done through Zoom or it's done remote. I'm not sure, like that makes me a little hesitant on there. My husband graduated, got his MBA from Westminster, so I know my son would be just thrilled to be able to go and feel like he's doing some kind of coursework, doing something on campus. And I think that is super beneficial. And from my perspective, I am totally on board for that in spite of what's going on. I think if you open it up for anything to be done on campus, that's a huge incentive for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Ern Budvarson, the Dean of the Gore School of Business, is actually an observer on the call. And Erica Johnson, who is with us, is our VP of Enrollment. So they're part of our executive teams. I don't believe, and I'm pointing you out because correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I don't believe that the option of having any of these youth, especially minors, actually on campus in virtually any setting at this point will be allowed. Erica and Dean Budvarson, am I correct in that?
Yeah, you are correct. I think for this summer, the window has passed for us to have the appropriate liability and opportunity lined up to do on campus, and health and other reasons as well. So there's a variety of limitations for this summer.
But Cassidy, I think that you will find that we are attempting to devise things that will substitute that experience as much as is feasible from the safety and comfort of your child's own home, office, dwelling, what have you. It's going to be a trick. This will tax our creativities. But I'm surrounded by college students, and if anything, I understand creativity. So what else? What are some of the things that you might like to know about or understand with respect to what we're thinking about or planning?
Do you mind sharing what topics you are going to be covering in the classes for, I assume they're not exactly the same for middle school?
Well, we thought we would lead with religion and then devolve to politics and sex.
Good, good. Those are all important topics.
Okay. So to be a little more serious about it, of course, coming into our discussion, I certainly had some preconceived ideas and plans. And you have largely helped reinforce them. And this would be slightly different for the middle schoolers than for the senior high school students, of course, because of their experiential difference in life to this point. But I had expected to go through some of those basic financial literacy tools and elements that you would expect, from credit cards and savings to different types of investing, certainly a stock market simulation of some kind at an age-appropriate level. But I've also thought about going a little further. And of course, the financial literacy concepts would include the budgeting and all of those things that you as parents or just external observers would expect us to be. But I've tried to think and think back to what I might have liked my own children to have been taught at this age, or maybe my grandchildren, some of whom are this age, or even if I could get back that far in my mental reaches, what I might have liked to have known at the time. So I've envisioned actually taking them, virtually of course, and buying a car and having to apply for the loan and sit down with the finance manager and choose some simple options and then be faced with the cost of insurance and maintenance. I've thought about actually running them through the scenario of, I think all of you are probably expecting to go to college. I'm making an assumption given the group that's likely to self-select into this. How are you going to pay for it? And I know Tristan's got tens of billions of dollars because he understood my keywords, and so I know that he's got that income code down. But lots of households are going to expect their child to make some meaningful contributions to this, either currently or in their future, or maybe all of it. So what's the plan? And where does this come from? I've even theorized about exposing them to some of the practical components of home ownership, acquisition, and maintenance. If for nothing else, it's summer and you want them to close the screen door, or rather the door, when the air conditioning is going on in the house, right? So those are some of the things. We absolutely are planning to use the breakout sessions, whether it be Zoom or Teams. And I have supposed that we would need to have a counselor, coach, what have you, in each session with them to keep the focus running. I have wanted to consider an incentive system here that's not so trivial as to make it unappealing. And by the way, some of the questions that I will be asking you and them in the next focus group and in the surveys are all designed to help us understand the detailing of some of these, because they're easily quantifiable questions. They're closed into multiple choice, yes, no kinds of questions. Does that help?
So my one comment is, at least at my son's high school, they are required to take a financial literacy class. And he's taken it, and I thought it was a pretty well-run class. You might want to, there's a packet that has all of the information in it. You might want to look it over and just make sure you're adding value, which it sounds like those real-world examples would be really great for them to run through. So
thank you, Arden. That's very valuable input. In fact, you'll appreciate knowing that we've reached out to every financial literacy faculty member in the junior high school and high school, both public and private within the Valley. And I'm also actively participating in the financial literacy program that we have at Westminster. We had students from West High come in on select Fridays this last semester. So we not only have done that, but we'll continue to make sure that we see to it that those elements are covered, and we'll be able to give them a certificate showing that they have completed a financial literacy training program. Now, I don't want to suggest that that's going to substitute for credit hour needed elements within their school, okay? But it won't be nothing. I'm very respectful of the time and resource students and households will be committing to this, as well as I'm trying to be, of course, respectful of your own, and want to make sure that they step away with something that they can apply, remember, and appreciate. And which may be a bit of a trick, of course, but that's the aim here. Any other questions or comments? Please, Kip.
As a program, what do you think you are doing to make this program more accessible to everyone? And I ask this question because I know that in my community, this type of information is very much needed. But I don't know if everyone has access to this type of program. And I feel like we have a head start on doing these classes online because of what's been happening. I think it sets up perfectly a situation where you have the ability to access a demographic that you may have not had access to beforehand.
Kip, that's a very good question. And I'll invite Ern Bavarson if he would like to unmute and turn on his camera here if you'd like. But within the next several months, the Westminster College will open what is referred to, will open a new center. And that center is the Center for Financial Wellness. And the Center for Financial Wellness will take as its first aim to help see to it that all of the students in the Westminster College community and they're going through our experience have access to all of that kind of understanding, resource, tutorial, etc. But it will continue to extend well beyond that. I mentioned the West High School experience we had with financial literacy this last semester, which we, by the way, have had for a number of years running. And so this coming year, we'll be opening that up. And that's a free of charge scenario, by the way, where they come into the Center for Financial Analysis, spend some Friday mornings with us. And it's free of charge. Even the transportation to it from the high school is funded by some donations that we cultivate. And by the way, when I say we, I mean Ern Bavarson, our dean, and our development group. And so we're very attuned to the need to make this very accessible. We have some limitations in this first outing of this virtual camp structure, but we have some very definite aims in this respect. Dean, would you like to comment on that at all?
Well, sure. Although, Rick, I think you did a great job really summarizing what we're trying to accomplish here. First of all, thank you all for participating in the focus group session. I've certainly enjoyed listening to it. I've taken a lot of notes, and there's a lot of wonderful feedback to go through. So we've been doing these summer camps for years. They've been on campus, so the basic product is not new to us. And you will find across the nation that there are institutions that do this kind of a thing. What's different this time around is really twofold. One is we're making it virtual, which is a heavy lift right now because whenever you convert something from having been in person to virtual, there's that virtual online build out, which Rick is focusing on a lot, and I'm greatly appreciative of that. We're also reaching out across the nation and drawing on best practices and role models at other institutions to sort of help us along. But the second thing is that in the past, these summer camps have been just offered to small groups of local young people. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves with respect to our ambitions, but we want to really make this product statewide, available statewide. That's one of the blessings of online technology is that at really zero incremental cost, you can make this available to a much, much larger audience. And so, I mean, obviously we're doing the virtual because we have to. This is our response to COVID-19, but at the same time, we see a great opportunity to explore the extent to which we can move into a statewide kind of market and really develop a product that we can use in future years that brings not only a great service to the youth of the state, but also is very good for the visibility of the college, for the School of Business, and for really the importance of financial wellness and literacy nationwide. We're living in a time where there's great confusion about how the economy works and the future directions that people can take in managing their own finances. We have close to 40 million people unemployed right now as a result of the pandemic. We have the federal government going hugely into debt to keep the economy going. There are great ramifications of that indebtedness. I mean, all these kinds of issues, and people need clarity. They need guidance. Young people need clarity and guidance around these issues. So these summer camps are just one step that we're taking among many to address all these issues. We see a huge opportunity for the school and the college to do this kind of work.
Thank you, Ern. And that opens the door to perhaps the last thing I'd like to mention here. Obviously, we're dealing with issues that many people tend not to talk about in their homes much, or at least that was the case for my generation. You didn't talk about money. And that turned out to be a less than optimal strategy, as you can tell by the amount of debt that's been accumulated by my generation and perhaps even your own. That said, we're dealing with elements and issues that can be affected by ideology. Certainly, as the Dean makes reference to COVID-19, our state and federal response to COVID-19. And there are many ideological standpoints that are represented. All you have to do is open social media, the news, what have you, and you see everything on the right and everything on the left and a little bit of stuff in the middle. I want to make sure that you're aware that as I take the responsibility, or as I execute the responsibility of sharing this camp or these camps, that it is not our intent to share our personal ideologies. I'm fortunate to have my academic training as an economist. And as an economist, I recognize with some level of objectivity that economics is nothing but the science of decision making, and intend to approach this from that perspective rather than sharing a leftward leaning or rightward leaning or a wherever ideology on any of these potentially volatile issues. And this is an interesting week to use the word volatile. So with that said, thank you for participating in this today. I probably will be seeing a few of the rest of you, or a few of you, as some of your children might be participating on Wednesday perhaps. If you've not asked for your child to participate on Wednesday's focus group, but would like to, simply shoot me an email, let me know that. We probably can accommodate that. And know that, that our goal here is to see to it that there is something memorable, engaging, and applicable that comes from this. And I think you'll find that we'll have succeeded in that. Any final questions before we sign off?
Rick, I just have a final comment, but I can do that maybe outside of this if you wouldn't mind staying on for a minute.
I'm happy to, Emily. Thank you. Anyone else? It's 5 o'clock. Anyone that would like to sign up, you're welcome to do so. But again, thank you so much for your time. It's very appreciated.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
Thank you, Tristan.
We look forward to your class. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kip.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, guys. Emily, what would you like to offer?
I was just thinking about the topics that I had suggested were very practical in terms of savings and budget.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that just occurred to me as we were kind of wrapping up in that last topic was that generationally, this generation of students has a lot of fear around money in just with the Great Recession and all those things that happened when they were not in college and not in high school, and now we're experiencing another economic downturn. And so from a psychological standpoint, because that's of interest to me, I wondered if that was a topic that could be covered, where there's just a discussion about what money means to those who come into the classroom setting and how they experience it as a character in their life, as a and that, that's sort of like my frame of reference is always in more of a psychological standpoint, but I think that it has great impact on how we then use money as a tool and so on. So I would love to see some, an opportunity for students to talk about, like, are the students afraid of money? Are they excited about money? What does it mean? Just having them discuss it as as a way that it's been woven into the fabric of their households, and how they, is it a scarcity thing? Is it an abundance thing for them? That kind of a thing. So.
Well, thank you, Emily. I appreciate that. Ern, you have some comment?
Yeah, Emily, I thank you for, I hope I wasn't being intrusive by staying on, but Emily, I always so enjoy talking with you, and I wanted to be sure it's good to see you, and thank you for doing this. I really, really appreciate your feedback on this. This particular generation, and I've got a soon-to-be 20-year-old, and I have an 18-year-old. I have an 18-year-old who's starting college in the fall, and a 20-year-old who is going to be a junior in college. And I have often thought over the past couple of months, as I've watched the stock market crash and there's just complete turmoil in the global economy, that this generation of students may actually be worse off than my generation and Rick's generation. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very daunting thing for me to think about. This generation is moving into a situation where there may not be Social Security by the time they reach that age. The health insurance infrastructure may be completely screwed up. And heaven knows we've regressed so much in our relationships with our global trading partners that I don't know what the world will be like. There will be some new world economic order, but it may not be a very pleasant one. So I can very well understand how kids that age are potentially fearful of money and potentially fearful of what the future may bring them. And I like to think that these summer camps will help provide some security and some clarity and some guidance around that. So I really appreciate your point.
Yeah, that's great.
As do I, Emily. In fact, you'll be pleased to know, and Ern's not even necessarily aware of this, my expectation currently is that we lead the discussions the very first morning of camp of what is money. And I know that we're going to get very little participation from the youth in that first morning, right? They don't know each other. They don't know me. They barely even know you, and they might be your child, right? So we're going to talk about that. And then it's the last thing we're going to talk about as well. Once they've had this week of time to get used to each other, the concepts, etc. And I will seek to drive home the point. The money is simply an objective tool.
Right.
Period. It is not to be feared. It is not to be salivated over. It is a tool to get us to have an exchange system, so to help us affect an exchange system. So, but thank you for saying that. That kind of reinforces the need for that.
Yeah, and that's the kind of topic which I think Rick's been thinking about this already from what he's saying, but you have to sort of weave it in and out during the week and have it as a culminating topic at the end, but to float it a little bit at the beginning, but so true, so absolutely true.
And maybe, I just don't know that kids have the language to talk about it, and so giving them an opportunity to think about how they might like to talk about it with their parents too, so I'm imagining that might be built in, but just, what are some questions you have of your parents now, and what, is that is that, anxiety producing to talk to talk about money with your family and with your friends?
Sure.
And
right. One of the things that I've been over the last month or so been making a lot of calls to high school seniors who have been admitted to Westminster but just haven't decided whether they want to come here. And as I've been talking to a lot of these young people, and I made 135 calls, I've spoken to a lot of young people who are in households where either a small business has failed, where a parent has perhaps been laid off, in some cases permanently, and the anxiety that they convey to me, I can't make a decision right now because things are so topsy-turvy in my family. I feel I need to stay and help my family. I mean, I was blessed when I was going to college that I didn't face those conditions. But these kids are. And, can you imagine that happening on top of the fact that they don't have a high school graduation ceremony and they had to disruptively switch to online a couple of months ago? I mean, that's a lot to ask of this generation. It really is.
Well, I just appreciate you, Rick, and Ern, for putting this on and doing it in a creative way and having a focus group and asking us what would work and what wouldn't work. And so just thank you for inviting us.
Well, thank you.
Emily, which of the schools do you teach for?
So I was an adjunct professor for the Bill and Vieve Gore School of Business for a time, for about 8 years actually, and now I work for the Coaching and Mentoring Center. So I work part-time on campus as a staff person, running mentoring program for our college kids.
Right.
For you, I knew that you were associated with this. I just didn't know how. Well, thank you for participating tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. I've heard a lot about you, and it's nice to finally meet you.
I'm sorry to hear that, Emily, but I'm not what I'm perceived to be. So
all great things. All great things.
Thank you. All right.
Bye.
Have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rick.
Bye.
Thanks, yeah. Good night now.